Welcome to Yoga with Sara. This is my own special blend of Yin Yoga and Bowspring Yoga. I combined the stretchy, slow mindfulness of Yin with the strength-building aspect of Bowspring, creating a class series which balances strong and stretchy. This class was recorded live and has been edited for clarity, privacy, and length. Enjoy! Welcome, everybody. Nice to see you all. First, go ahead and find a comfortable position. Let your eyes close and yet continue to feel lengthened through the front line of the body. So allow the face to be facing forward versus tipped down. Bring awareness into the breath in the body. And see if you can feel the ribs expand and contract in all directions. So not just up at the chest or just at the sides, but let yourself feel expansive, 360 degrees, front body, side bodies, back body, and top to bottom. You might even sigh it out. And I want to read you something that one of my teachers read this week. I like to attend a Zoom yoga class in Tucson with Mindful Yoga Tucson. And my teacher, Shraddha Hilda, read about resilience, and I am going to share that with you because I felt like we've spent this year waiting for something to happen, and whether it's something bad or good or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's just that we have been uncertain, and so this really hit home for me and I wanted to share it. She wrote, "Resilience isn't about being able to do everything at the expense of your health. Resilience isn't about overriding your exhaustion. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Resilience is not about denying or suppressing who we are in order to power through. Resilience is when we are able to allow ourselves to be transformed by difficulties." I thought that was beautiful, and I love that in yoga we are practicing always to be present to our practice, to our breath, to our spirit, to our community when we are on our mats, in hopes that we can bring that balance out into the world. So this idea that resilience is when we are able to allow ourselves to be transformed by difficulties gives me hope that we are all going to pull through this year that we've had, and any other life difficulties too. It also ties in with some of this new teaching that I'm doing, this Bowspring method. There's an idea in Bowspring of something called tensegrity, and it's about the way our bodies are self-supporting. So we're not necessarily like braced and locked on our bones, but we're hugging our muscles onto our bones and learning to have this uplifted feeling through, they call it the central channel. So really tail and pubic bone all the way up through the body, through the throat, through the back of the head and neck. And I haven't learned this in my class, but I don't know if any of you remember as a kid, there were those little, they're kind of like puppets, but they're made out of strings and beads. And there's a thumb pushing button at the bottom of them. And when you push the button, the puppet goes crumble and just kind of totally falls over. And then you release the button and the figure pops back out with strength. So it kind of reminds me of that, like we're building this strength to hold ourselves up. Let's get started with a little bit of review. I'll scoot back so you can see my feet and my hands. First hand position, bright hands. Your fingers are spread, pressing in, and now at the same time squeezing on the pinky finger and first finger the base of the thumb and then the base of the pinky finger, like you're gonna squeeze all of those down while the center of the hand lifts up, not much. And once we're putting weight on it, it'll be even less. And back to bright hands. And then another hand position we'll practice is dome hands. And this is where, I don't know, is your hand a big spider? I'm not sure, but you don't put weight on it. This is a position we'll find when we take the weight back into our legs and we can transition hands from bright to dome. So it's not putting unnatural weight on the fingertips or finger joints. That's dome hands. Another position is horseshoe hands. And this would be putting the hands around the thighs usually to help press the body up into this lengthened position. Globe hands, so kind of like your domes, but now you're gonna press your fingertips, your fingernails together and bring this out in front of you. Let your fingertips press together. Lift the arms from the underarm part of the body. That seems kind of funny. Lightly press the fingertips together so you feel some activity in the pectoral muscles. And also breathe into the back ribs. Get a little longer and taller. Good. And release. It's not a hard pose, but there's all these components that make it more dynamic. The final one is headrest hands. I'll do this from the side. Headrest hands is just making your hands to go to the side of your head and then pressing the head into the hands into the head, and giving yourself a little bit extra tone in your back bend. Okay, so I'm seeing some folks with elbows out. Let's bring elbows in. Good. And then soften that. Okay, so that's the hands. The feet are, well, we called them last week, we called them baby feet or bicycle feet. And it's like this feeling where, I'm gonna make this be my bicycle pedal. As if your foot was over a bicycle pedal and the toes are coming down one side, but the arch is lifting up and the heel is coming down the other side. But the top of the foot is drawing toward the shin. So if you place your feet out in front of you on the floor, move back a little bit more, get my feet in the picture. And think, usually we lift our toes in order to lift our arches. This is a different way of doing it. One thing that happens when we lift our toes to lift our arches is we're actually lengthening them and shortening them simultaneously. So this baby foot or bicycle foot is asking us just to find integrity in the arch without overstraining on a lift. So we're going to think about lifting these front of the foot ankle muscles toward the shins, and you can watch your own arches go up a little bit, so kind of normal and lift. It's very subtle. I don't know if it's even visible. We'll think about rooting through the big toe, base of pinky toe, and each side of the heel while lifting through the arch. This will become a little easier as we come into some postures. Okay. Let's go ahead and find our hero's seat. Keep your grippy mat available. We will spread out extra blankets and stuff like that shortly. But to start, let's have our grippy mat there because we're going to need that resistance to find that hero's foot or baby foot or bicycle foot, however you want to think of it. Bring my things in so I can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to sit on a block. That's about as much as I need. You may want to sit on a bolster. Maybe I want the bolster. I'm going to sit on a bolster. So if you try something and then you think, that wasn't that comfortable, try something else. This is also where I said if you wanted to sit on a chair edge, you could do that. So if your knees don't allow for this kind of sitting, take it up to a chair instead. From Hero's Pose, what's nice about Heroes is that we can really start to tilt our pelvis forward and our tail comes behind us. We're not jamming into our lumbar. I'm thinking of it more like the front of the belly and the pubic bone are rooting down and behind you. And then the belly is kind of, it's like it's drawing in a bit, but it's getting long at the same time. Let's take our horseshoe hands to our legs, and this is going to help us find that arching in the back and the length in the belly. So go ahead and press the hands into the legs, and even though we're sitting, try to press the legs into the hands. Feel how that brings activation to the whole back line of the body and into the legs. Lengthen from the pubic bone up to the collarbones, and then even through the throat, looking up. So even though you're pressing the hands into the legs, you're not supporting your weight exactly with your arms. Your arms are just helping you find that length in the spine. And release. Let's combine this with the bicycle foot or baby foot. So your toes are pointed behind you. I'm going to have you press the tops of your feet into the mat and then try to draw the feet forward. So I'm going to do that slow again. If you need to see it, watch my ankle. Pressing the tops of the toes into the mat and then drawing the toes toward the shin is going to activate the front of the ankle and the shin and create that arch in the foot. It's a lot of tone in the legs. And this time, instead of the horseshoe hands, let's go into our globe hands, bringing the hands out in front, pressing fingertips together, broaden through the back of the shoulder blades. Breathe into the back ribs. Lift the arms a bit up from this under the armpit kind of a place. Also settle the collarbones a little bit down, lengthen the pubic bone to the ground, and lengthen the front line of the body as the back line finds tone. Keeping the toes pulling toward the shins, breathe. And soften, letting everything go. In Bowspring, there's never a rounding. That's a really different teaching than the way I've ever learned. I'm going to let you decide if you need a break from taking that action in the back. If you need to find that rounding, that's okay with me. But know that in the tradition that I'm learning, there's just never any rounding. We're going to take this one more way. We're going to try it with our headrest arms, but let's bring ourselves toward kneeling and get rid of our prop. This is going to be our most active. So let me think. If you cannot kneel on your knees, that is okay. You could either just still do this from seated on your chair or your bolster, or you could even come to standing and do it from standing. For folks who can do it from kneeling, we'll start kneeling. We'll start with our toes. Root into the tops of your feet and draw your feet toward your shins. So you've created this tone and integrity in the fronts of the shins. From here, send your pubic bone and tailbone behind you, like you're going to sit on your heels, but you're never going to. You're just getting really active through your legs. Make your horseshoe hands. Lengthen the heart up to the sky. Take a breath into the back ribs. Staying here, bring one hand up to headrest. I don't care which one. I'm doing my left. Press the head into the hand, hand into the head. If you've done left hand, you might even twist a tiny bit left. If you've done right hand, twist a tiny bit right. Come back to center. Relax your hand. Bring yourself back to your kneeling. Soften your legs. Find your breath. Find ease. And we'll take the second side. So finding your roots, drawing your toes a little bit toward your shins. If it helps you to think about sending your hips back, you can even poke your fingers into your hip crease. Send your hip crease behind you. Good. Hands in horseshoes. Lift the heart. Broaden the back. Take your second hand to headrest position. Push your head into your hand into your head, and whichever arm is your headrest, turn that direction, a tiny twist. Take a breath. Soften your way back to center. Release your arm. Let's come down to all fours. If you've had the chair, you can join us on all fours. Cushion under the knees is fine, although we are going to use a little bit of grippiness by tucking our toes on the mat and also by gripping with our hands on the mat. So just a little bit more of this bowspring style of lengthening this front line and finding tone in the back line. This all fours position or tabletop position is slightly different in bowspring. So you probably already guessed, we're going to root the tops of our toes, pull our toes toward our shins to activate the fronts of the ankles. We're going to lift this center part of our palm if we can, just a little. So it's like we're squeezing the outer edges of our palm toward each other to get a little bit of lift in the arch of the palm. We're going to send the tail, the pubic bone, the hip creases back while we lightly grip the mat and draw our heart forward. So we're not jamming into our low back, but rather finding length and strength in the front line. Looking forward. Good. Okay. Keep going back, but shift your weight to the right. We did this a little bit last week. Dome hand, your left hand. You're really supporting yourself with your legs. Staying here for a breath, or bringing that dome hand to the back of the head for a headrest and pressing into the hand, taking a tiny twist in this position. And releasing back to bright hands, both hands. Bringing yourself to neutral. Taking the second side, rooting into the tops of the feet. Lifting the centers of the palms. Send your hip creases behind you. Tail is lifting, pubic bone is lifting behind you. Lightly grip with the fingertips. Draw the heart forward. Feeling how this creates a length in the front line of the body. Breathe into the back ribs. Send your hips a little further back and to the left. Dome hand the right hand. So your weight coming over the legs is making it that you don't need any weight in your right hand. Staying here for a breath, or bringing right hand to the back of the head for headrest, pushing into hand with the head and taking a tiny twist and releasing. Coming back to all fours and just rocking a little bit back and forth here now. So not necessarily coming into that Halloween cat, but just finding some rocking in the hips and the shoulders. I'm going to start moving into finding a little bit more opening in the body. We're going to take kind of a forward fold in a bowspring style and then bring ourselves to the mat for a more yin style. From all fours, tuck your toes. This is maybe more what we're used to. Begin to lift your knees off the mat and send your hips far behind you. You're keeping your knees quite bent. Feel how this is quite a spring-loaded position, and you can even kind of bounce a little bit here, feeling how this brings quite a bit of tone into the legs. From here, let your feet walk the width of your mat. So now you've got, a foot and a half or so between your feet. Bend your knees more deeply. Walk your hands a little closer to your feet until you can get your feet on the ground and until you can take the weight on the legs and you can dome your hands. Your tail and pubic bone are still reaching behind you and up. These dome hands are lightly pulling you forward to help you find length from the heart down to the pubic bone. But it's a lot of work in the legs. So this is kind of the most stretchiness you might find in bowspring, but it's like all work. Often the cue here will be squeeze your knees like it's a beach ball. And now root into your heels and try to rotate them out away from each other without moving the feet. What does that do? It activates kind of this back of the butt area and broadens your sit bones. Good. Ease your way out of this. Walk your way forward. Come into a traditional down dog of your choice. You might pedal it out through the feet, bending one knee and then the other. You might hang the head, shake it out a little bit here. You might kind of shift weight on the feet one side to get a bit of a side stretch and then the other. And eventually we settle ourselves back to all fours and we start thinking about how to get extra cushy and comfy if that is in your process, as it is in mine. I'm going to go ahead and spread out my blanket on top of my mat, and you can take the time to do that as well. You should have a little something to put under your behind. We're going to take a seated forward fold. You might want a bolster to lay your body on, or a block where your head can land eventually. Once you get yourself situated, we'll come into a seated position. Might want that. Might want two blocks, right? So I can get extra high to land my head on. We're going to take a wide leg forward fold. So, I forgot my cushion. You might want this cushion under your behind to help you get that rolling forward position of the pelvis. And then I'm doing blocks in front of me in the hope that at some point my forehead might land here. If we were doing this in a bowspring style, well, they don't even offer this pose, first of all, but it would be drawing the ankles in, drawing the heels in, bending the knees, being quite active in the legs, and then there's nowhere to go. In a yin style, we're relaxed through the legs. We start the crease, the forward motion at the hip crease, but then once we get to a point where that hip crease is not bending anymore, then go ahead and let the body round. Let the head come toward your props. For some folks, this is quite a lot, especially after we just did all that strengthening. You may end up with a very tall prop, right? and that's fine. Bring your mind into these places. Like for me, I'm really feeling it in the inner thigh. For you, it might be other places. Bring your mind's eye to those places that are calling out for attention. Check in with those places. Bring breath to those places. I sometimes find that I need to slide my hands under my knees or add tiny pillows under my knees or back out of the pose a little bit. We're going to be here for about 10 breaths. So this is where we really start settling in with the yin style. We really take our time. And if this is not working in your body, take a different forward fold. If this is just making you feel anxious and irritable, I mean, there might be a message there, or it might just be, this is not what you need right now. Then maybe legs together forward fold would be more suitable, and you can still add your props onto your legs, and that feels, you feel it in a different place in your body, okay? As you settle in, let me read about resilience again. Resilience isn't about being able to do everything at the expense of your health. Resilience isn't about overriding your exhaustion just because you can. Doesn't mean you should. Resilience is not about denying or suppressing who we are in order to power through. Resilience is when we are able to allow ourselves to be transformed by difficulties. From Shraddha Hilda at Mindful Yoga Tucson. Yin allows us time for the connective tissue in the body to melt and lengthen. Yin encourages us to be still, but it also allows us to wiggle in a little deeper as things change in our bodies. It also allows us to back up if we've gone too far. Let's take a few more breaths in this position. Now, your choice. You can keep staying here if you're thinking, ooh, I'm finally settling in. You can keep staying. If you think, I'd like to make a little change, then you might just back it up a little bit and walk your hands toward one side or the other. I don't care which one you do first. And then let yourself begin to fold out over one leg instead of through the center. You can prop up an arm. So I'm folding out over my right leg. I'm going to prop my right arm up next to my right leg on my block. And then I can experiment with my left arm. Do I want to let it come long to the sky, reaching up and finding this length through this whole left side body? Or do I want to reach toward the toes or maybe even beyond the toes of the right foot? What if you had moved into Dandasana? That's okay. Then you could just bring your left leg into a bent position with the leg laying out to the side, and shift yourself a little bit until you can turn to the right leg, and it'll be very similar for you. You can still experiment with this side bending position if you want to, or find a straightforward fold over the right leg. And I'm saying right, but you might be on your left. Either one is okay. I like to breathe into my left side body once I've tipped over to the right. There's all this space in there. I like to let my head look up to the fingers and tip back, and or turn to look down to the floor. So then I'm finding feedback in my legs, in my side body, in my neck, in my shoulders. And I invite you to breathe into these places that are calling for attention. If you have any SI joint stuff, be gentle here. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Good. When you feel complete on this first side, ease your way up. Walk yourself over to the second side, bringing your props along as needed. Aiming the body over the left leg if you want to take this more as a forward fold off to the side, or keeping your body more pointed to the center of your legs, but then letting your left arm come to a rest. And I've got my block here, I'll set it a little higher, next to my left leg, and then letting the right arm sweep up and over. So this, for me, doesn't get quite as much into the leg, but it's a lot more about the side body. I always feel like that's kind of a place we forget about. So I like to work into this and really direct my breath into these kind of little tight spaces in here. Experiment with where your body is calling you to move, calling you to pay attention. It might be in turning the head gently. It might be in this side bend or this reaching of the fingers to the sky. Or it might be in changing your mind and saying, ooh, I think I went too far too fast, and making a little change in the way your body's oriented. Have a look at your feet. Are your toes relaxed? I notice I keep wanting to pull them back and they're kind of like sort of tense. Let your feet soften. You might even wiggle your fingers and toes. Good. Let's take one more breath. Slow in, slow out. Find a bit of integrity around this core band in the belly and back. Ease your way up and back to center. Help your knees. So bring one hand under one knee, help drag that leg in. Bring one hand under the other knee, help drag that leg in, both legs out in front. One more forward fold. Some folks already did this one. See how this one feels now that you've already done it. I'm still going to add my props onto my shins because I just like knowing I've got that kind of forehead rest ready to go. You can find the hip crease and start there. Quite soon, most likely, your spine will round. Your head will start to drop. Now, one thing about having a headrest is you might not feel the extent of the lengthening of the fascia as you would if you didn't have the headrest. So for example, I've gotten rid of my blocks, and now this is about as far as I'm going to go in my forward fold, but I'm going to let my head hang. And I'll invite you to try this. I feel like things have changed. Like I've just gotten a lengthening through the back of my neck. And I can feel it in the soles of my feet. I'm not pulling my toes back or anything like that. It's just that by dropping the head, we've lengthened the entire back line. While the head is dropped, you might shake the head a tiny bit left and right. Let's take about 1 to 3 more breaths in this forward fold. 1 if you're feeling done, 3 if you're still feeling fine. Or maybe you take the 3 breaths to slowly bring yourself toward upright, rolling the spine, letting the head come up last. Addressing the question about the feet being in or out. I think partly it's how do your legs sit in your hip sockets, and partly it could be tightness in the body that's going to make them want to go one way or the other. And comfort. Let's draw our knees in. Be nice and kind. Turn the lengthwise way of your mat. Have either your one block, I've got mismatched blocks, but that's okay. Have either one block on each side of you, or maybe one bolster on each side of you, or there's all these options, right? Or a bolster that's wide enough that when we come down, we're going to come into a reclining bound angle. So wide enough that your legs aren't going to fall off. So something to support the knees on each side. Also have handy, just going to get everything ready at once, have your spinal strip where you can reach it so you don't have to sit up again. And if you want to, I know my feet are kind of cold, so if you want a little extra blanket, you could pull your blanket on now. We are going to do a little bit more core stuff, but we're going to find a reclining bound angle first. Okay, so let me say, if you would rather take reclining bound angle in an upright position just to keep comparing our forward folds, you can do that. You can find your cushion behind you, you can let your knees drop open, and you can take your forward fold in this way. If you came here thinking, oh my God, I love laying down, I know I'm going to get to lay down in this class, then let's lay down. So that would just be tucking the tail, rolling your way down, having your bolsters or your blocks ready, soles of feet come together, knees drop open, and the blocks support us. We are not in, if I took these away, my legs could go wider, but again, just because you can doesn't mean you should. I'm going to get my feet covered up with my blanket. We're going to linger for a little bit, whether you are choosing this from seated or from laying down. We'll be here for a while, so get comfy. An option I didn't offer is that you could lay on a bolster here from your lumbar to your head. And I'll kind of sit up and demonstrate this, and you can choose. I'm finding that I'm liking less props lately. I don't know if it's the bowspring or what, but because normally I'm like a propaholic. But you could, and I've got a little pillow for my head, you could try this elevated position of your back and then the knees on the blocks. Okay, well, honestly, this is pretty comfortable too. Bring your mind to the places in your body that you are noticing. Those are easier to find because you've already noticed them. Maybe there's a tightness in the hips, or if you added that bolster under your back, maybe you're kind of feeling these ribs like arcing down over it. Or you're feeling the pull of the shoulders as we open up and lay down for the first time. Allow the breath to become smooth and steady. Now let's bring awareness to places where we carry tension but we don't even notice. Smooth the forehead. Soften the eyes in their sockets. Allow a little space between the top teeth and the bottom teeth. You might even run your tongue around the teeth, both in front and in back. So around the front of the teeth and around the back of the teeth, tops and bottoms. Licking the lips. And swallowing. Taking a breath and softening the throat. Let the head shake a little bit side to side. If you chose this bound angle as a non-reclining position, you might still be quite happy, or you might be thinking, darn, I wish I was laying down. And for those of us lying down, we're going to stay a little bit longer. So if you did choose to do this seated, you may decide you would like to roll on down and join us here on the floor. Eventually we will all be here on the floor. So we're going to meet up here anyway. We haven't done a lot about relieving any tension in the fronts of the shoulders. If you would like to add this in while we lie here, I'll cue a few things and you can choose to lay still or to add in this shoulder work. If you'd like to add in the shoulders, start to float the fronts of the shoulders toward the sky. This is very slow, and roll them into the heart. And just as slowly release the shoulders with gravity toward the earth. So I'm noticing some quivering, some quaking, especially in my right shoulder. I'm right-handed, so that kind of makes sense. There was probably some fatigue from trying the bowspring, and or some SMA, or sensory motor amnesia. Let the shoulders soften completely, so no bounce backs. And then try that again, floating ever so slowly, floating the shoulders toward the sky. rolling them in toward the heart. You might notice your arms are rolling a little bit with the movement of the shoulders. Let the head tip back. Let the back of the neck release. And then soften the head, neck, and shoulders. If you come to those quaky spots, back up a little bit toward this, back up upwards, back up toward the sky, just a bit, and then release again. I'm going to have to back up over my speed bumps a few times, I think. If you're still sitting, ease your way back to seated, help your knees together, and roll your way down to the mat. If you are already laying down, you might bring your hands to your legs, help them come back together, knees drawing toward each other. If you are on a bolster, just roll a bit to one side, take your props out from under your back, set them aside. Let's lay ourselves down on the mat. And we're going to take our morning stretch in a specific way. So start to tiptoe your toes in a bit closer to you. Hands come in that horseshoe position around your legs. Press your hands to your legs to your hands. Roll your tail to the earth. Get long through the belly. Lift a little bit through the heart. Press into the back of the head. Breathe into the back ribs. Now let the hands let go of the legs and reach overhead, and even pull your knees in a little if you need to or want to. And feel how this will happen. This position of the tail to head might happen in the morning when you wake up. Take a breath, lengthen. Exhale, release the legs down. Let the arms stay reaching above your head, but they can soften to the earth, and then lay your legs out long on your mat. And bring the feet to the corners of the mat, bring the hands to the corners of the mat. Let yourself settle here for a moment in starfish. Breathe the breath to the fingertips, the toe tips, to all edges of the body. On the exhale, let go of the breath from all parts of the body. On the next inhale, expand fingers, toes, whole body, arching the back, pressing the tail to the earth, feeling like, oh yeah, this is my morning stretch. And exhale, soften down. Good. Finding a little bit of core integrity, draw one knee in and then the other, coming to constructive rest pose, lifting the tail, lengthening it, bringing the arms back down by the body. Here's where we will find a little bit of a back massage and a little bit of a supported arch. So instead of supporting with our muscles, we're going to support with the spinal strip or with your rolled blanket, or you could even just fold up the blanket that you're laying on so it's a little bit more under your waist. But where this is going to go, so you're going to press into feet, lift up your behind, slide this spinal strip crossways to your body so it's sticking out each side of your waist, and find your belly button, and it's going to be about behind your belly button. You're going to set your lumbar onto the spinal strip. I'm just lifting this arm so you can see this if you need to. And then you're going to let your tail dip down to the earth. Okay, arms could be out or down by your sides or resting on your belly. I'll just keep mine out so you can see what is happening at my waistline. If right away you're thinking, this is not a position I like, then your prop is too big, okay? So you should make your prop smaller. If you're thinking, this feels good, this is probably just about right, or if you're thinking, I feel nothing, then you might need to make your prop a little bit bigger. So get your prop situated crossways to your body. Right side sticks out of your right waist, left side sticks out of your left waist, approximately behind the belly button. Press your tail to the earth. Lift your lumbar away from your prop. You're not going to get off of it really. You're just making the back feel lighter to the prop. And then soften. Let your lumbar spine press into this prop. Let your knees take a tiny tick-tock. Right and left. So now we're getting a little bit of a massage in the low back. Taking this to a slightly more challenging way. Feet are aligned with the front hip bones, which are these points that you feel at the front of the hips. So if you kind of lift your head and look down, the hip bones should be aligned with the center of the thighs, and the feet are down from that. You can't see them, but your body knows. From here, let's go ahead and lift our behind. You can curl your tail to the backs of the knees. You're still pressing onto your lumbar spine prop, and then you're lifting into little bridge. So you're completely lifted off of this prop that's behind your back. From little bridge pose, try to sit your tailbone down first. So we've been practicing this. We're going to send our tail behind us. We're going to send our hip creases to the earth first. The pubic bone to collarbones is going to get long. We're going to set our butt down before we let the back rest on the spinal strip. That's a lot of work for the back. And if you think, what on earth are you talking about? Then don't lift up. Just curl the tail so that it tucks between the thighs and uncurl the tail until the tail presses into the earth. And that's what we were doing with our bridge, but we were taking it a little bigger. We were curling the tail, lifting up into bridge, and then we were pressing the tail or pointing the tail toward the earth and trying to dip the tail down to the earth first. If you want to try it again, you lift up into your little bridge pose, and then your tail and your pubic bone both point down to the ground. I'll move my arms. And the tail drops first, and you're very long and lean through this frontline body. Good. Let's drop in and take our tick-tocking knees to give our backs a little bit of a massage. And taking this a little bit softer, but also a little bit deeper. We're taking our twist a little bit deeper. Let's lift up enough to get the prop out from under us. Set it aside. You might want a bolster or a block or something on your left side. We're going to take a twist, and it might be nice to have something to rest your knee on. Let's rock our twist a little deeper before we move into the one I have in mind. So we've been tick-tocking our knees, Go ahead and take that tick-tock a little more. As the knees drop left, the head rolls to look right. Everything comes back to center. And as the knees drop right, the head rolls to look left. Some of us find this moving meditation to be more soothing than coming to stillness. So I'll let you have the option to keep on taking this little bit of a rocking twist. But for folks who would like to add a more yin and still aspect, next time you come back to center, lift your hips enough that you can scooch them to the right. Send your left leg long and straight. Draw your right knee into your left hand and tip your lower body over to the left. This is where having your blocks or your bolster over here could be pretty nice. It can also be nice to have like your spinal strip behind you a little bit so you're propped from the waist down. You're kind of propping yourself into this twist. If you've taken this, the left shoulder lifts up a little and then lays back down. I need to adjust where my prop is. You can do that too. Arms, you decide, do they come out wide? Does the left hand hold the right knee? Does the right arm go up and overhead? Where does it feel like you've got sensation, but nothing is a strain? Find that place in your body. Bring that softness to the brow again, the jaw, the eyes in their sockets, the throat. If you want to turn the head to the right, you might scoot it left a little bit first and then roll it right. That'll help keep your spinal column all aligned while you twist. Soften the belly muscles. The muscles of the pelvic floor. The hand that's holding the knee, if you're in that position, let go of gripping, allow it to be more restful. Let's take 3 more mindful breaths on this side, feeling the breath expand us in all directions, feeling the breath release in all directions. When you feel complete, rolling the head back to center, starting to unwind your twist, perhaps getting rid of any props behind you, letting that waist unwind slowly, bending the left knee, planting the feet, scooting yourself back to centered on your mat. Taking a few tick-tocks with the knees. You might start transitioning your props to the second side. So if you had a bolster on your left, move it on over to the right. If you like that idea of propping yourself slightly into your twist, you can have a smaller prop like your spinal strip or a small bolster on your left. Go ahead and lift your hips, slide them left. Straighten your right leg out along the mat. Draw your left knee into the right hand and begin to draw that knee across the body, landing hopefully on your bolsters or props or whatever you've got over here. And then maybe taking your spinal strip to prop from the waist down. The right shoulder lifts a little bit to help you kind of realign the spinal column. Arms might just lay out to the sides. They could rest on the waist or the belly. Right hand might want to hold the left knee. Left hand might even want to go toward the top of the mat. I feel like my arm's gonna fall asleep when I do that, so I don't love that position. I mean, I like it sometimes, but right now it's just too much. If you want your head to turn to the left, scoot it right a little and then roll it left. Take a breath in and sigh it out. Notice how on that sigh, the belly softens, the pelvic floor softens, the jaw softens. It's a reaction we don't even know we have, but you might find yourself sighing and you don't even realize it's the body relaxing itself. Let's do it again on purpose. Inhaling, expanding all directions in the body. Sigh it out. Soften the brow, the jaw, the tongue in the mouth. Soften the fingers, holding the knee if you're in that position. I'm finding turning my head to the left isn't working on this side. It's working, but I don't feel like forcing it. So coming back to that idea of resilience, just because you can doesn't mean you should. It doesn't mean we're powering through. It's more about honoring what is true in this moment, in our bodies, on our mats today. Let's take a few more breaths on this side. When you feel complete, ease the head back to center. Move that prop out from behind you if you've got one. Help the knee unwind. Gentle, gentle. Setting that left foot down, bending the right knee, planting both feet, realign yourself on the mat, and check in with what you need before you head for Shavasana. Do you need to hug the legs in? Do you need to plant the feet and take a little bridge pose to realign in a really even posture? What is your body calling for? And then eventually we sprawl ourselves out with our blankies and our bolsters and whatever else we need. Maybe it's one more of those morning stretches. Somehow I feel like laying with my hands under the back of my head like I'm laying in the sun at the beach would feel good right now. Let your Shavasana be your own personal expression of rest today. I will read once more about resilience as you settle in. Resilience isn't about being able to do everything at the expense of your health. Resilience isn't about overriding your exhaustion just because you can. It doesn't mean you should. Resilience is not about denying or suppressing who we are in order to power through. Resilience is when we are able to allow ourselves to be transformed by difficulties. Shraddha Hilda, Mindful Yoga, Tucson. Let your breath breathe through you like your whole body is a straw, inhaling from the soles of the feet up to the crown of the head. Exhaling from the crown down to the soles. Inhaling, soles to crown. Exhaling, crown to soles. Your choice now. Continue to stay here in Shavasana and have a bit more of a relaxation at the end of class. Or if you choose to come up now on your next inhale, sweep your arms overhead and give yourself that morning stretch again, rolling out wrists and ankles. Starting to ease into a bit of movement in your body, which eventually morphs toward rolling to one side to come up to seated. If you're staying on the ground, you might just lay one hand on your heart and the other on top. If you're coming up to seated, same hand position or palms together at the heart center, seeing what feels good for you today. Letting yourself feel long through the central channel, letting the eyes drift closed, although keeping the throat long. Thank yourself for giving yourself this time to practice yoga. Thank yourself for this practice in resilience. Let us be filled with peace and ease and bring this out with us into the world. Namaste. Thank you for joining me today. If you found this practice useful or enjoyable, please consider giving this video a thumbs up and subscribing to this channel. Thank you. I'll see you next time on Yoga with Sara.